come from a mixed marriage, mixed in the Jewish context. So it means that my mother is Jewish and her both parents were Jewish, and my father is Polish. And so because of a complicated family story, I have few stepsisters from both sides. So it means I have a Jewish sister and a non-Jewish sister. My Jewish grandparents, they survived the war. One of them, the grandfather, he stayed hiding around Warsaw. And my grandmother, she spent the war in Kazakhstan. She was a doctor. And right after the war, she came back. They met, and they decided to stay in Poland. First in Łódź, then they moved to Warsaw. The first years of my life, I grew up in a very typical Polish Catholic kind of environment because of the neighbors and the friends from the kindergarten, and actually my parents' friends. And because for my father, it was very important to keep the Polish Christian traditions. And my mother, she gave up on influencing it. In the beginning, totally not aware of what's going on. I knew I was Jewish, I always knew. Even my father still, right before he died, him and my mother, they took me to a Jewish camp, like one of the first, I think it was 89, in Zaborów. And it was just, for me, it seemed like a game. I just didn't really know how to find myself in it. But it felt like, I remember the feeling of confusion that was common for all of us. Later, I started becoming more interested in my own family story and the reasons why we're here and all the rest is somewhere else. How did it go? I started asking questions. How was 68 to my mother? She was 20 years old, and when I was 20 years old, I was trying to imagine what would it be like for me, and there were moments that I felt like, oh, how could you stay? And then we talked about it, and now I changed also. I went through many different stages of Jewish identity.
So my mother is halachically Jewish, her mother was Jewish, and my father is Polish. So I was 16 when she told me, and I was really surprised because I really didn't know. But I was happy because I always knew that I'm different, and I've never felt Polish mentality, and I always knew that I'm different from my peers. And for example, in primary school, there was a guy who was calling me Jew, you are a Jew. And I was fighting with him because I was always taught that not to be racist. And so when someone was telling me that I'm a Jew, I went to the teacher and told my teacher that, come on, he's telling that I'm a Jew, but Jew is not a bad word, so he's a bad guy, So even I didn't know that I'm Jewish, my mother always was teaching me that I have to fight for minority rights and fight with anti-Semitism and racism. So my father was always telling my mother, don't tell her because you will destroy her life. And recently I had a fight with my father because now I'm a very active member of Jewish community here, and last year, for example, I was a participant of Minyanim program. Minyanim program is a leadership Jewish program for young people in Central Eastern Europe, also in Israel. So I told my father that I would like to have a Jewish husband and Jewish kids. And he said, you're not Jewish. Only your mother's mother was Jewish. And why you don't feel like a Pole? And it's faking, And I said, but this is how I feel. And I feel good in Jewish environment, you know. I feel like at home in Jewish environment. I don't feel it in Polish environment like that. It's not so strong. So it's my choice, you know. So I was even crying because he doesn't want to consider me as a Jew.
I was not brought up as a Jew, and my family was not particularly Jewish in any sense. But then, when I was 13, my mother decided or my mother suggested that I would go to high school, to the Lauder School, which is a Jewish community school. And so I said, yes, why not? And actually it was in the Lauder School where I found out that actually I'm not just going to the Lauder School because it's considered a relatively good school with a new approach to education, liberal thinking alternative, but it's also because of that other reason that we also are Jewish, in fact. And although it was somehow in the family, we never spoke about it, and I never really explored this aspect of the family. So it was with the Lauder School where I started to investigate this issue. I started to ask questions, and eventually it was me and my cousin who also went to the same high school who started to bring back Jewish traditions in a way to our family. So we convinced our parents to let's celebrate Seder night, Pesach, and it became a tremendous success, just a happy get-together. And eventually it grew to be the most significant and important holiday in our family. It was Christmas before, but actually Pesach and Seder night beat Christmas, so to say.
I was born into a traditional Hungarian Jewish family. We kept the Jewish holidays and traditions, so we were not the average Jewish family, like who are just hiding their identity. I knew from the very beginning that I'm Jewish, and I was always very proud. I was always it was in the middle of my thinking. I was very interested in Jewish things, although there were not so many around me, because there were no Jewish schools, there were no Jewish youth movements or things like this. So actually my Jewish, I had this small little wrapper, for example, that I got from my relatives in Israel, and this was something like very special with the Israeli flag. And since I was not allowed to tell anyone or to show it, it was like a mystery, a secret of mine that I'm Jewish. So, but it was very exciting, and of course it changed after 1990 when all the Jewish Renaissance started in Budapest.